Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have fled the city of Rafah as Israeli forces intensify their military operation there. Neighboring Egypt has now told the United States that Israel's actions in Gaza are jeopardizing regional security. Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry discussed the need to restart aid deliveries to Gaza in a phone call with Secretary of State Antony Blinken. The two also discussed the Israeli seizure of the Palestinian side of the Rafah border crossing. Cairo says the presence of Israeli troops and tanks violates a 2007 treaty. Israel's move has exacerbated simmering tensions between Egypt and Israel, so much so that Egypt has announced it will formally support a case brought by South Africa at the International Court of Justice, accusing Israel of committing genocidal acts in Gaza. Let's bring in journalists Karim El-Gawari in Cairo and Balik Sladin in Tel Aviv. Good to see you both. Let's start with you, Karim. It's Egypt's decision to join the ICJ case a direct result of Israel seizing the Rafah border?
Well, what is clear is that the Egyptian side is very, very angry. They asked for weeks Netanyahu not to do an incursion into Rafah. They pleaded to the Americans to stop this idea. Now it's happening since days. Israeli operations in the immediate area of the Egyptian border and even at the Egyptian border crossing of Rafah with Israeli tanks and soldiers stationed there, and famous pictures of Israeli tanks pointing their barrels towards the Egyptian side. So a lot of Egyptian anger and basically two answers. The first answer was that the Egyptian side suspended the security cooperation at the immediate border area with the Israeli army. That, of course, has an effect on the aid coming from the Egyptian side towards the Gaza Strip, because that has to be coordinated between the Israeli army and the Egyptian side. And the second thing, as you mentioned, that Egypt joined the case of South Africa at the International Court of Justice in The Hague, where Israel is accused of genocide. So a lot of Egyptian anger.
Yeah, the second one, a more symbolic one. What does this tell us about the state of relations between Egypt and Israel, Karim?
Well, they are very frosty right now, I would say. I mean, the Egyptians are saying basically that the Israeli incursion into Rafah violates existing treaties between the two countries, where there is stated that there should be some kind of demilitarized zone in the immediate border area where there are no heavy weaponry, where there's no heavy weaponry allowed. The Egyptians say this is now violated. And in a way, I mean, this is, of course, don't forget Egypt and Israel. This is the oldest peace treaty between an Arab country and the Israeli side in Camp David in 1979. And we might come to the point where this is at a disposal. So that for Israel, after the foundation of Israel and the 67 war and the gaining of occupied territories, the Camp David peace treaty is maybe the biggest achievement of the Israeli state. And that might be at the end even at risk in this whole thing we're seeing right now.
Balik, let's hand it over to you. So Egypt is saying that the seizing of the Rafah crossing violates security agreements between Egypt and Israel. So why is Israel so keen on holding the Rafah crossing?
Well, if the question is why so keen on holding the Rafah crossing, it's obvious that Israel wants to make sure that there are no smuggling of any weapons from the Sinai Peninsula inside Gaza at any point in the future. But Israel, after all, doesn't want to hold it forever. And this is the main point here. A report today in Israel said that the Israeli officials asked the PA, the Palestinian Authority, to take control, at least unofficially, for the Rafah border, and they refused because they don't want to do it before the end of the war, which means maybe they don't want to do it before the end of the war because they don't want Hamas to attack them. And this whole idea of the Egyptian narrative that they are doing this as a result of the Israeli operation in Rafah doesn't really align with the fact that Israel, according to many officials, did coordinate with the Egyptians this operation, limited one to say, for months now. So this is very weird that the Egyptians are taking these steps right now, especially after the coordination.
Mm-hmm. Well, they say they are angered, and the two countries, as Karim pointed out, have a long history of security cooperation that is very beneficial for both countries. How worried are Israeli officials over the tensions with Egypt?
Well, we can say, obviously, there's a lot of frustration between the two parties right now. But I talked to security officials today. They told me that they see this as a lip service by the Egyptians. Because after Israel entered Rafah crossing and Israeli flags with the tanks were very close to Egypt, they want to calm the anger from the Egyptian public. That's why they are now participating in this case against Israel in The Hague. And then the official is saying that Egypt just doesn't want Israel to expand the operation in Rafah because their red line is obviously the Gazans to actually go through the crossing to the Sinai Peninsula. This is the red line for Egypt. So they want to pressure Israel by doing this, not to expand the operation that is taking place right now in Rafah.
Mm-hmm. So, Karim, what can Egypt do about all of this, about Israel crossing its red lines and, you know, the presence of Israeli troops on the Rafah border? Would they risk suspending the peace treaty with Israel?
I mean, for them, it's to wait and see when there is a time to they can exert pressure on the Israeli side. Because don't forget, Israel needs the Egyptians as mediators between Israel, Hamas, and the US. This is a role they were playing all the last weeks, so this will continue. And the second thing is also that Israel needs probably Egyptians for the day after. And right now, of course, we don't have any idea what the day after looks like. I mean, Netanyahu told us that when he will go to Rafah, there is 4 Hamas battalions which he has to destroy, and then the war will be over. Now the war is flared up in the north again in Jabalia, so it's all one big mess. And I guess as long as it stays to be such a mess, Egypt will stay out of any kind of post-war role within the Gaza Strip.
Mm-hmm. Balik, we don't have much time, but I do want to talk about the day after. Does the Israeli government believe there is an end game in Gaza which doesn't involve heavy Egyptian participation?
Well, this is exactly the main point of this agreement, not only between Israel and Egypt, but also between Israel and the Americans. Netanyahu, even today, said that there will be no discussion about the day after unless there is full disarmament of Hamas and total destruction of Hamas in Gaza. A lot of critics are saying that Netanyahu can't take that decision because of the right-wing hardliners in his cabinet and in his government in general. And as I see it, in the current formation of the Israeli government and coalition, this can't be done. There can't be the wishful thinking or the wish that Egypt wants, which is the PA controlling all of Gaza. So this is the main point of disagreement for now.
Karim and Balik, thank you so much to both of you.